For a fun and informative podcast all about training working dogs, look no further than the LWDG PODDOG. This weekly show is hosted by me, Joanne Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group, and I chat to experienced trainers and experts in the field who will give you helpful tips and advice. Whether you're just getting started or you've been working dogs for years, this podcast will have something for you. So pull up a chair, pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to LWDG PODDOG. And let us help you build a better bond with your best friend. Hello and welcome to another episode of LWDG PODDOG. This episode is going to be a very different type of podcast where we're going to be talking to Clair Rees of Wild Spirit Dog Sledding. How are you, Clair?
I'm great, thank you. How are you, Joe? Thank you so much for inviting me on here today. I'm really super excited to be talking to you, especially, two Welsh girls. I don't get much Welsh culture where I am at the moment, so it's great. I'm always excited.
So to explain to our listeners, where exactly are you right now?
Right, I'm based in Sweden. So I'm emigrated from Wales 11 years ago. I up sticks and left Wales and emigrated to Sweden to set up a dog sledding company with my now husband. He's Welsh as well. When we actually moved here, we were a little bit crazy. We actually lived in the mountains, in the Swedish mountains. Now, do you remember years ago the book called Heidi?
Yes.
My favourite book. I always wanted to live in a cabin in the mountains, and guess what? I did it. I followed my dream, and that was it. And we lived in a little cabin in the Swedish mountains, 850 meters up. No water, no electricity for the first 5 years. So basically you can say I camped out for 5 years in the winter, minus 15, minus 20, could be minus 30, with just a little bit with a fireplace to keep me warm. And that's how we set up our dog sledding business, Wild Spirit Dog Sledding, as you said just now.
So it must have been an amazing experience, but what was the reason that started it? Why did you end up there?
Okay, so originally I always wanted to emigrate. Okay, Wales is beautiful. We both know Wales is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, I love the country, I love the people, I love it. But every time I went on holidays when I was younger, it was like, yeah, I'm going to live here. It was always in me. Something was in me, a calling to say that I was going to emigrate. So just to up sticks and leave Wales was not like a spur of the moment idea. What happened was Richard, my husband, he was living in Sweden and we'd been working together. Then we became friends, and then we were both married before, and then our marriages split up, and then we started dating while he was in Sweden, basically, when he moved to Sweden. So he asked me over to Sweden on a date. £7.99, Ryanair, very cheap back in those days. Cheap date. And I'm a project manager that was my main job in the UK. So to come over to Sweden and project manage this project with him was a no-brainer. My project had come to an end in Wales. I always wanted to emigrate. I'd fallen for this man, so it was a no-brainer. So we were going to set up a Bushcraft school, actually. But we quickly realised he already had 8 huskies. So he brought 8 huskies from Wales to Sweden. And then we realised that actually this is the way to go. Another dog sledding company, he was getting rid of his dogs. And we basically bought that company out. And that's how we actually set up. So it was organic. It organically grew. But Richard, as a lad of 15 years old, he always had working dogs. I always had dogs. My dad always had spaniels and working dogs when I was younger. So it was it was to actually work with dogs. Well, the funny thing was, when I actually was leaving Wales, all my friends said, you're leaving Wales and 8 dogs? That's just crazy, And if you consider the amount of dogs I've got now, which is right now it's 63. 8 dogs is nothing. But for anybody out there who actually knows, it's like once you get one husky, you can't just have one, you have to have 2, then 3, and it's like a collection thing. The same with working spaniels, I've seen loads of people with like they get like 8 or 10 working spaniels, aren't they?
Oh, without a doubt, they are very much a collectible item. You see one, and then literally, if it wasn't for my husband saying there's only so many we can have, like before my dad passed, we had anywhere between 15 and 30 in the kennels at any one time. There was a purpose to each one, if that makes sense, and that's what it's like for you, isn't it? All 63 of your dogs do a job.
Yes, they've all got their jobs, even from like the lazy ones there who and think of a room full of human beings. That's how I say to people, who don't know much about it. Think of a room full of human beings. I've got a room full of huskies here. They've all got their different roles, their different characters, the different way they look. We've got dogs that we've got to watch their weight. They put on a lot of weight quickly. We've got dogs that they're underweight. We've got to really watch how they eat and give them double helpings, and and things like that. And that's the same, isn't it, with a room full of people? We've got some idiot dogs, set to try your patience. We've got some lovable dogs. We've got some the dogs who are hierarchy. We've got some teachers. We've got the concerned dogs. Every dog in our kennel has a role. We got the old age pensioners. They're quite funny because they can do what the heck they like. You think of an old person who's retired, they don't give a step, do they?
You've got this kennel of huskies that are used for sledding.
Yeah.
Now, obviously I understand the concept of sledding.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it takes to do it, or what their job is exactly, as in like how far would they travel, or things like that. So when you decided to set this up, obviously they were your now husband's dogs.
Yeah.
Had you had any experience with the breed at all?
No. And I have learned so much. If you just imagine, I had these 8 huskies and I had no idea. I used to train dogs. I had spaniels and I trained spaniels, but to have 8 huskies is completely different. It was a huge learning curve. When I first started, I used to go in the kennel, and I'm a soft touch, right? I'm a nurturing, if you think of me and Richard, if we had children, I would be the nurturing mother and he would be the playful, strict dad,
Yeah.
You can get away with a lot with me. And the dogs knew that. Dogs knew it. They can actually tell your personality before you know yourself. They teach you. They taught me so much. I wasn't in charge. I didn't go in there with the right personality. I went in there with these small, fluffy, little, beautiful huskies. Wrong attitude.
Yeah.
And I remember reading, and the one thing I took was, you have to be the hierarchy. And when you go in a kennel of dogs, you think you're Cleopatra, right?
Yeah.
So what I did, at this time we had 21 dogs. We had 21 dogs. I'm thinking, crikey, I've got to sort myself out by here, because I'm not getting this connection. There's something wrong. And it's all about you as the owner. Nothing to do with the dogs. The way the dogs act is all because of the owner. And what I did, I spent weeks doing this. I took every single dog out for a walk, one by one, and I walked through the forest with them, thinking, believing, because you have to believe it, I'm Cleopatra. I am in charge of you, And, and sometimes they were like, no, you're not, they pushed me to the limits, because if you don't think like that, they are going to take over. Now, every dog, it's pack of dogs, they need a leader, and they want you to be the leader. If you haven't earned that respect from them to be that leader, they will take control.
Yeah, because your dogs, like, although we say very much when working spaniels, I've got a team of spaniels. They
Yeah,
are a team, but they're
yeah,
not a team that works together. They're a team who sit together and then work
yeah,
individually, or they
yeah,
may work an area together, but they don't
yeah,
rely on one another to
yeah,
do their job. They can each do it individually on their own if they were out on their own, or with another 7 dogs if they're out with those.
yeah.
Your huskies, they work as a team, don't they?
They have to work as a team, and this is what the training is all about. In the summertime, when they're not on a sled, that we let them loose, so we can have 20, 30 dogs out loose. This is where relationships are being built. This is where now if you spend a time with a pack of dogs of this many, and you sit back and you can watch and you learn much more by just relaxing and watching than actually from all the books that you read.
Yeah.
They are teachers. They teach you so much. So in the summertime, you're watching them. You're looking at, of their personalities, of who they're connecting with, who they're not connecting with. Some don't like to be in a big team. They will hide behind your legs. There's some are in there and they're in the middle, and they're like the extroverts, and all the other dogs surround them. So this is where you can see the dynamics of your team. And then in the winter time, then when they're on it's called, I don't know what it's called in English, I only know the Swedish word.
Tell us
It's
the
called a
Swedish
span.
word.
It's called a span. So it's when the dogs are out or in front of the sled. And you've got like 4 different positions on there. So you've got the lead dogs. Now these are strong, determined, dogs that want to actually please you, but they have to be independent as well. Because if you think about it, if you're out in the mountains and these dogs are relying 100% on you, they're not relying on their instinct, and they can get you out of trouble. So if you're in a storm in the mountains, these dogs can take you home, and that's what you need your lead dog to do. And you've got a brilliant connection. You have to have a brilliant connection with your lead dogs. So you're controlling your dogs just a bit like you are controlling your dogs. There's no hands-on. It's all by the connection that you have with your dog. So you're controlling your dogs from the back, which is not something that we're taught, is it?
No.
When you normally got your dogs by the side of you. You're taught, in like the pet world, then that the dog doesn't pull in front, the dog stands to the side, but our dogs pull. If you see me now, I've got an injured dog in the house and I'm taking her out, and people must think, oh, well, her dog's out of control because she's pulling me like crazy. Well, that's what I want her to do. I can control her even though she's pulling me. And so they are the lead dogs, and they are amazing. They are, they make you cry. You're so proud of them. Then you have the next in the team, which is called a swing dog. They help the lead dogs. So if a lead dog is not quite sure of left or right, and sometimes we'll put a young one in to test it, then the swing dogs will guide it. So if you're training young dogs to be lead dogs, we put an older swing dog behind so they can help that lead dog.
Right.
Then you've got the middle dogs, and they're the team. And some of these dogs just love to run. Like, they are rubbish at lead and they're rubbish at a wheel, and I'll tell you about a wheel now. But they just want to be in that team. They just want to run. These dogs, if you've ever, they're born to run. And I'll explain about puppy training as well if you want me to. But they just want to run. So you just put them in a team and that's all they want to do, and they're happy to do it. Now what we will do sometimes, because sometimes a lead dog will become too much of a hierarchy and start messing us around. So we'll demote them to the team.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't like that one bit when they get demoted. They're what? They're so intelligent, honestly. You have to be one step ahead of them all the time. All the time. Now, a wheel dog is a big, strong dog. He is at the back. So he's got the sled directly behind him. So he has to be confident. He has to be strong. Because if you think about it, if you're running 10 kilometers per hour and you've got something behind you that could go into the back of your legs, you need to be confident that you're pulling hard enough so that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I remember going up when I first started, I went on a 2-day tour with my husband for the first year, and they've passed away now. Okay, I had Case and I had Kenzo as my wheel dogs, and then Dodge and Cooper were just in front of them. And I was driving the sled and I was absolutely rubbish, we were going over bumps and I wasn't controlling my sled. Well, I remember, I can see it now, Case looking back at every time as if to say to me, you're not doing this right. I'm not comfortable with this, So he taught me how, over those 2 or 3 days, how to drive a sled. Because every time he was not happy, I was maybe pulling on him too much, he'd look behind me and he'd say, no, that's not right. Do it a different way, please. It was so cool. It was so cool. It was just, and you can actually get this relationship when you're out with the dogs on the sled. You build up this amazing relationship with them, because you don't have to give any voice commands to connect with your dogs. You can actually, you think about it, when you have a dog on a lead, right? And you've got a nervous person with a dog on the lead. They don't say anything, but they see another dog coming towards them. That dog on the lead will know you're nervous and start barking and start barking, start becoming angry, and showing its teeth because you're nervous. And it's the same with the sled. Those dogs, when we have tourists, sometimes we have tourists who like, oh, but I think I'm going to hurt the dogs. I'm like, no, they know that. You've got to treat them as if you're not going to hurt them. They were fine. They're absolutely fine. We had a girl years ago. It was so funny. Now, we start off with one person. We normally give them 4. She had to go down to 3. She had to go down to 3 dogs. And she was just I think she had, I can't remember if she had 3 males. But anyway, she was letting them pee at any time that they wanted to. A male dog will pee anywhere and everywhere. Yeah. They knew. Coming back at the end of the tour, that's all I heard. And I was waiting at the top of the hill. I seen Kenzo. He ran past me. He got loose. And I was like, okay, he's home. And then I could hear this girl screaming, help, help. Well, what had happened was, because she'd let them pee so much, they'd wrapped themselves around a tree. Kenzo got loose and came home. He'd had enough. He got out of his harness and he'd run home. He was like, I'm not doing this anymore. But they just know. They just know that you're the way you are actually feeling, and they'll mess you around. Any sign of weakness, if you're in a bad mood, any sign of weakness, curtains. You've just got to go in there, and that's one thing they taught me patience, a lot of patience. And they've taught me to deal with my emotions, because if I'm going down that kennel, if I'm going on a tour in a bad mood, I'll have a bad tour, because the dogs know.
One of the things they're incredibly good at is either using your emotions against you, or working with your emotions. Like you say, if you act like the parent figure, provide that guidance, provide that way forward.
Yeah,
it's very easy for them then to know what you want, which I think is quite lost a little bit in today's pet world. This thing of wanting to be the dog's best buddy, but not its parent. You need to be both, don't you? You can be best friends with your dog, but you still need to provide guidance. Without guidance, they are lost.
Joe, we've got dogs on the sofa. We have got dogs in the bed. I've got a dog home right now. She's got an injury. I woke up this morning and I'm on the corner of the bed. She's in the middle of me and my husband, but she's a dog.
Yeah.
And she knows the rules and she knows what we expect from her. And and you are right, you know, it's that they're not children, they're not humans. Dogs are 95, or animals are 95% instinct, you know.
When you've sort of grown from 8 to more, and then to more, and then to 63, what's that like now? Because like you've got these teams of like where you can split them up. You can say you're a team of 4 or you're a team of 8, but the 63 of you, and we're going to mix match you. How does all that work? Is that your understanding and knowledge of each dog deciding who goes with who?
It's tried and tested every time. Tried and tested. So this is what the training season is for. So sometimes we have 2 dogs in each kennel. We found that when you can in Sweden there's a law, and you have to have a certain size kennel for a certain amount of dogs. So we did try with 4 dogs in each kennel, but you know, huskies, when they fight, they fight. There's a huge fight. So when you have 4 dogs in one kennel, it's never fair. It's never 2 on 2. It's 3 on 1, and that's not fair. So when we rebuilt this kennel, we had 2 dogs. So it's 2 dogs in each kennel. Now, some dogs who actually live together can't work together. So that's what we use the training season for, because we can try and test them. And sometimes dogs from last year, they'll surprise us. We're like, oh, we'll try them in the lead. It's about watching your dogs and knowing your dogs, because sometimes we're like, hang on, that dog, we say vänster for left and höger for right. So it's the Swedish left and right. So you'll say vänster and you think, hang on, that team dog just went left before the lead dog. Let's try that dog in the front, and they'll surprise you, because the dogs will learn from each other.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's what the training season is all about, to figure out where the dogs will fit for this year. So they got the summer where they're bonding as a team, and then they've got the training season then where you can figure out where they are going to go in the teams. So we have like so many wheel dogs, so many team dogs, so many lead dogs as well.
So for you, you talked there about like a training season and then like a sledding season. How do your seasons work?
So how they work is that the training season starts now in autumn time. So we do that on a wheel cart, because we haven't got no snow. So that will start as soon as the temperatures start to go down. You will be able to tell, because the energy levels of the dogs go up as well. So okay, now it's time that we start, you know, we start to train, and we've got to be a bit careful because it's the hunting season as well, and we can't clash with the hunters. So this is where, and then when the snow comes then, which is normally November time, that's when we can get the dogs out onto the mountains then, and we can use the sleds. That will last then, normally that will go on until after Easter. So it's
Right.
like, it's normally Easter Sunday, and then everything stops. The phone call stops, the tourist season stops. Now, how it works as well is that we do the shorter tours during December, because we're building up the dogs' fitnesses. And because we've got only 4 hours of daylight, then we can only do shorter tours. So the dogs are building up. They've already keep their fitness through the summer, but they're getting the strength and the fitness back. And then we progress then on and on then to the longer tours. Now, we're tourists, we're tourism season. So our dogs will do, in a day, can do 30 to 40 kilometers. Okay, that's not really that much compared to these dogs, because when they're actually racing, they can do 100 kilometers in a day. What happens with them is the more you train them, just like anybody, the fitter they get, the more they want. You think, right? It's hilarious. You think, oh yeah, I've given them a good run today, put them back in the kennel, they're going to sit there, give them their food, and they're just going to be relaxed. Oh no, the Alaskan Huskies, because we've got Siberian Huskies and Alaskan Huskies, they're just like, yeah, okay, I've had my little rest, let's go. Are you going to go do some more? So they will run and run. The Alaskan Huskies will give you 100% work. 100%. They can have an injury and they still want to work, you know. Now the Siberian Huskies will give you 80%. They're a little bit wiser, you know. They will and that's why they use more Alaskan Huskies these days for racing, because they want to keep going. The Siberian Huskies are a lot slower, a bit calmer, and but they'll give you 80%, you know, and they reserve their energy.
Isn't it mad though when you think, like, as you're talking to me now about like distances and their behaviours and their teamwork and their pack work, and then I can understand, and I in no way do I blame people ending up in houses with huskies, because if you don't know what you don't know, you might have got a breed and not really understood whatsoever what characteristics you were taking on.
Yeah.
When I'm talking to you and we're speaking, I'm thinking it must be even harder for a husky to live in a house, like on its own, pet.
Yeah, I agree with that. It depends though. It can depend. We have rehomed dogs, and I'm very, 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 very careful of who our dogs go to. But we have rehomed a husky, and we're like, this dog doesn't want to bother with anybody else. It just wants to be on the sofa in front of the fire, you know. And there can be some like that. There can be, mostly the Siberian Huskies, right?
Right.
The Alaskan Huskies, no, it's always an active home. But also they do need, and this is a huge thing, they do need to live outdoors. Because their fur is so thick, right? You normally see a dog who is a house dog, a house husky, is overweight, because they've got no way to expel its energy, because it lives indoors. It doesn't have to expel any of its energies, so they need to be outdoors. And if you see them panting, the huskies I've got home right now, right, my flipping bedroom windows open in the night because she's panting like crazy, you know. And but that's the way that they actually maintain their weight, is by them being outdoors. They're doing their job and they're living outdoors as well. Like our huskies, they've got an insulated it's called a hunkoya, like a dog house. It's insulated, you know, and you go down there and they're on top of their insulated house.
So do they obviously, like, dogs shed for different seasons? You know, huskies, like, every time I see a husky, it always looks fluffy. Is it ever not fluffy?
It's so funny, right? Honestly, it's like during shed, I think they shed like twice a year, right? And I won't have them home a shed at a time. Honestly, it's like buy one, get one free. But what happens after winter time when they shed their hair? And because our dogs are working dogs, they're in a kennel, but they just look like a basket case, you know. They look terrible during shedding season. But no, they're not always fluffy. And sometimes, if I haven't been down the kennel for quite some time, my husband goes down there every single day. If I haven't gone down there, I'm like, who the heck is that? And he's like, that's so and so, because they've shed and they look completely different. But no, they're not always fluffy. They do lose their fur, especially the Siberians. The Alaskans, not so much.
So with regards to your using your huskies for tourism, can people do they take out a sled on their own? Is there is there a set path the dogs, almost like a riding school where the dog knows exactly where it's going because it does the path over and over?
Yeah, but they won't take the dogs out on their own because there's so many other issues, underlying issues that we've got to think about. So when these dogs are used to tourism, just like horse riding, like you said, but everybody will get a course, okay? Because when people come to us, they think, oh, these beautiful fluffy doggies, you know, and they have a course. But also what we do, we've got a guide in front, and then we've got a snow scooter on the tour as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of bits and pieces of ropes and things like that to help guide the dog. So our guide on the snow scooter can watch for any issues. So it's not just getting on the sled and those dogs, you know, taking off. And there's a lot of other things you've got to think about. You know, it's like there's a brake, but not always the dogs will stop when you use that brake. Some people will slow the dogs down because they want speed, and because it's interesting, you know, and we get really annoyed with this. It's interesting how many people will come, oh, well, that wasn't fast enough. And I'm like, they're animals, I'm sorry. But it's all about the connection with the animals and what they are doing for you, because they're working blooming hard for you, even though they love it. I said, so you need to respect that, you know, all this, well, we don't mince our words. Our dogs will always come first, you know, so we don't mince our words. So it's not about the speed. It's all, we keep it quite slow so that the people are safe and the dogs are safe as well. And the priority is the dog. So we have a snow scooter on tour as well, if there's any issues. There's so many things that we have to think about, and you can't plan every single day. It's all about thinking on your feet.
It's fascinating. My husband runs an activity centre, but he used to work in a quad bike centre, and it was a 300-acre farm in Caerphilly, so you'll know where it is. And people would come there to ride the quad bikes, and that's all they'd say is, normally men, and normally of a certain age, would be like, I want to go faster, I want to go faster. Yeah. And they would, half of his day would be trying to stop people from hurting themselves, because they've got no concept of what that speed entails, and what it takes to control its speed, and what happens if you have an accident at speed. But, you know, it's so frustrating for him. And with yourselves, it's probably far worse, because not only do they want to go speed, but if they're breaking something, they're breaking your dog, who you have a connection with. You know, it's bad enough, I suppose, if you break a quad bike, but parts can be replaced. Dogs cannot.
Yes, exactly. So we don't mince our words. We have had to say on, like, we've been doing this for 10, 11 years. We've had to say on 2 occasions, carry on doing that, and you're getting off the sled and you're walking home. And I don't give a stuff. You left in the mountains. You're not doing that to our dogs. Because what they do is they try and slow it the whole team down. And then when there's a huge gap with the team in front, because there's no overtaking, we don't allow overtaking. And when there's a big enough gap, then they let the dogs run. Now, they don't know that there's a hill. They don't know the area. So when the dogs go down the hill, you imagine that sled's going down double the speed if you take your foot off the brake. That doesn't happen. You know, you don't do that. So I think on 2 occasions, I think my husband's lost his cool on 2 occasions. But, you know, he's not somebody you mess around with anyway, and people know that. So it is quite frustrating, and it's to understand. And this is why I try and explain to people, you know, it's like, you have to learn how to drive the sled and understand the connection with the dogs, so the dogs want to work for you and with you before you can pick up the speed. And that takes a long time. It's not a 2-hour tour.
No.
And one thing I can't stand is when people get off the sled and they don't stroke the dogs afterwards. I'm like, the dog, do you want to say thank you?
So for anyone who's listened to the podcast today and they're thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind like going out and seeing this, or taking part in this, or finding out more, how do they get hold of you? You know, what is the process of coming out to you and trying dog sledding?
It's easy. You just have to, you can just Google actually Clair Rees Sweden and you'll find me. Or it's wildspirit.se, and that's our webpage. But Clair Rees Sweden, on any social media, you'll find me. And if you put dog sledding Welsh couple Sweden, you'll find us. I now and again I Google my name, and there's a lot of information on there, and my husband Richard Rees as well. So
do people come out and stay with you, or do they stay locally and then they just come to you for the day? How does that work?
No, well, we have a little tourist village, and what I do as well is I run. I got like a website where people can go on and they can book cabins, so beautiful little cabins in the Swedish mountains, so they can book a cabin there. We also live 30 minutes from Sweden's largest ski slope. It's a place called Åre. So it's an amazing sort of a skiing area, downhill skiing. What's great about our area is that I'm not into big tourists. I don't like being in amongst hundreds of people. With 30 minutes from that, with the dogs, with the downhill skiing. But in our village, then we've got the dog sledding, the cross country skiing, the little cabins. We've got the frozen lake. They can go ice fishing at the beginning of the winter season, ice skating. You can go fishing by boat. There's all these little mountain walking, cycling. There's so many activities that you can actually do in our village. But it's not like high tourism. It's one shop with one petrol pump,
Well, thank you very much for doing the podcast with us today. It has been absolutely fascinating. I've learned loads about huskies, and it is really nice to see how dogs work in other areas, not just gun dogs, but dogs doing different things. If anybody wants to contact you, they can contact you on your website, as you've said. Is there anything else you want to sort of share with us before we end the podcast?
We did do a show called Escape to the Wild with Kevin MacLeod a few years ago. So that's out there. It's called Escape to the Wild. So that's how you see how we started off our life, living in a cabin. So that's quite interesting. But I do want to share something. It's like follow your dreams. There's a lot of people out there who wish they'd done things. We upsticked, we left Wales to Sweden. We had 8 huskies. We had $2,000 in our bank account. And boy, have we got a story to tell. Like what have we done? It's 45 minutes, I think. I don't know how long we've been talking, but and this is just the tip of the iceberg, what I told you, Joe. Just the tip of the iceberg, So it's follow your dreams. And what I say is that a dream will always remain a dream unless you write it down. And when you write it down, it becomes a plan. And then once you start planning, you can then implement that plan and your dreams will become reality.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for giving us your time this morning. If anybody wants to find Claire, I'm going to put some links in the show notes and on the website. I'll also see if I can find the episode you just referred to and see if I can put a link onto that so that we can see some video of you and your dogs too. Thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed, and we look forward to speaking to you all next week. Thank you for listening to LWDG PODDOG with me, Joe Parrott. Now, we all know training a dog takes time, energy and patience, but our lives can be really, really busy. Don't worry, the LWDG has got you covered. Join us for our free planning workshop where we'll show you how to use short 10-minute training sessions each day to fast forward your dog's education. Our experts have years of experience in training dogs and will help you get started on the right foot. Register now and start making progress with your furry friend today. Go to our Facebook page, the Ladies Working Dog Group, and click on the pinned post, or visit www.thelwdg.com.